Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
And the ball is loose. Third and 4.
Welcome to another AFC North Talk here with my guy Ace Tony Q and here's Sunny. Hey, this should be a fun one. Last week it was fun. The safety talk, you guys wanted it. We deliver. One thing before we get started, I forgot to pull the polls, but we have polls. We have four basically. Who you think is going to be first, second, third, and fourth, because we cannot put in a poll and you cannot rank them. So we put four polls, so go check them out. We'll put them later to see where they are at the end of the show. But we tweeted that this might be the last show before the season. It might or may not be true. We're trying to figure that out, but that's why you have to hit the bell. If you hit the bell and follow us on Twitter, you get notified either way. And Twitter will let you know if we're coming live. Also, if you hit the bell, when we come live, boom, you will know. Okay? So today we're ranking, and we also giving you the record. We're not going to deep dive into the schedule because if not, we're going to be here for 5 hours. But
we may be here. Let's be honest. We may be here for 5 hours anyway.
Especially with you guys in the super chat, right? But shout out to all of you. Shout out to everybody here. Make sure you like before we get started. I'm going to just throw it. You know what, Tony? I usually don't start with Tony. So, Tony.
Yeah.
Who do you think is number 4?
Number 4. Oh, we're going right into the rankings. I like it. We're going right in here.
And record.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, the way I do rankings, with this is I know we're gonna do.
Oh man.
I know we're gonna do records here, right? I have the Bengals 6-11. I have them as the worst team in the division. I do think there's a range, though, and I'll talk about the ranges for each of these teams, right? Because look, do I think that the Bengals cannot be an 8-win team this year? No, I think the Bengals could be an 8-win team if everything goes right for them. If you need a lot to go right, but and I also think that they could be, I think they could also be a 4-win team like they were. One of the interesting things looking at last year's Bengals team, they won as many games without Joe Burrow as they did with him. So and I think that speaks, I think, to Zach Taylor and what he was able to do and how that team kind of not only rallied around Burrow, but that was a team we talked last year about Zach Taylor and him kind of pushing those veteran players out, and the locker room was turning on him. No, they were okay. I think they were decent without him. I have 3 questions about the Bengals. Number 1, and this is very Steelers, but it does speak to, I think, problems that they're going to have defensively. Mike Hilton's usage, right? I've talked about this before. Mike Hilton's a very interesting player at the nickel position, but you have to use him in the right way. My big concern with this Bengals team, and it's not just about Mike Hilton, it's about that defense as a whole. We've talked about this defense and the game plans that this team presented a year ago. This is an infusion of talent that they've gone through on the defensive side in Cincinnati. But how are they going to use those players? I think is as big a part of the talent that they have at each of those positions. Question number 2, obviously about the offensive line. Ace has talked about this on his channel. A lot of Bengals fans are talking about this right now. The whole Michael Jordan situation, the whole Jackson Carman situation. It's early in the process. I don't want to read too much into an early depth chart, especially here in the beginning of August. But look, if it is true that Jackson Carman's not going to start, then this is a team that's really going to be switching out one player on that offensive line from a year ago. It's a big question mark. And then, of course, the last one to me is Joe Burrow. And I know this is another one where Ace has talked about this. I've listened to Locked On Bengals. Joe Burrow had a very bad start to camp. But, again, don't want to read too much into that. Just question marks for me about Joe coming back from that ACL. And specifically, when we talk about guys like Ben last year who said it took him a year to get used to it. How long does it take Joe to get used to that knee? We've already talked about the arm strength issues. So there's a lot of questions for me about this Bengals team, but I have them improving over last year to 6-11.
Okay, Ace.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be the Steelers. Me and Tony are going to be swapping places here. Same record. And I think just like him, I've got questions for the Steelers. Now, don't get me wrong. I know historically the Steelers have always been a team that is going to hover over 500 or right at 500, right? So why would I think that this year would be any different? And the reason that I think like that is I kind of looked at the schedule and I looked at games that I felt that they would lose. And the Bills game is a loss for me. The Packers game, Seahawks, the Browns twice. I actually had the Browns sweeping the Steelers. And then I get into some other games like the Chargers, the Ravens, the Vikings, the Titans, and the Chiefs. So they're playing some good teams. It's not like they're playing, your average or below average teams around the NFL. And for me, there's a lot of question marks from a lot of the people that left the team. We started in the secondary, which I've harped on the corner show. They lose Mike Hilton. They also lose Steven Nelson. They still have Joe Hayden, who's in the midst of a contract dispute, and they're waiting to get things settled with TJ Watt. But we have a lot of new blood in that secondary. And I honestly felt like their secondary was one of their strengths last year, and they didn't really replace it in the draft or through free agency. So for me, that's one question mark for them. The offensive line is the same thing. You had a lot of people walk out of the door, Marquise Pouncey. Obviously, there were some guys that struggled in Alejandro Villanueva. But the one thing that those guys brought was a multitude of experience, right? And you don't have that on the offensive line. And I think that that's extremely dangerous coming from a team that has had an inexperienced offensive line that can completely affect your offense. And then we get to the offense, which it was bad last year, but they're learning a new offense as well with Matt Canada. So that's going to take time for them to get comfortable with that offense, that transition from what they were in last year and previous years to this one, especially with you implementing a running back that's clearly going to be the guy. And so you're going to have to go from a team that wasn't running the ball last year to running the ball this year with a new offensive line. I definitely have some questions on that side. Obviously, the coaching is good there. And then you've got Ben, who is the older quarterback. And I didn't like what I saw from him the last time that I saw him. And so there's a lot of question marks there. You take that combined with the bad offensive line, with the brand new offense. I have some questions there. And you combine that with the schedule where you're taking on teams like the Packers, the Chiefs, and Titans. And these are teams that I think that if you had to look at it from a standpoint, those are teams that could be competing for a Super Bowl. I do think that they split with the Bengals, so I'm not saying that the Bengals are going to sweep them. The only team that I have sweeping them in this division is the Browns, because they have no one that can block Myles Garrett at all. And I think that the Browns are really going to wreak havoc on that offensive line when it comes to that. So that's why I have the Browns at 6-11. But I think not the Browns, the Steelers at 6-11. But like Tony is saying, there are ranges to this thing. We can see what's going to happen, but I don't think that they're going to get the good goodbye story for Ben that they're hoping for.
Thank you.
There are 3 guarantees in life. There's death, there's taxes, and there's the Bengals at 4. All right. So why do I think the Bengals are
You are
be...
playing into this hate, the hater thing. I mean, you are full on heel mode, and I like it.
Them last week, they gave me nonsense. Mostly gave me nonsense in response. So why even try to reason, right? At this point, the Bengals are 4. They have been. By the way, this is not me just like, I'm trolling the Bengals. Let me move my prediction. I have been pretty consistent on this since free agency, since the draft. Am I lying? Was I high on the Bengals free agency when it happened? No, I was not high on it at all. What about the draft? I was not high on it at all. The decision to keep Zach Taylor was not high on it at all. Felt like they didn't do enough on the offensive line. Felt like they didn't improve in the right areas. Felt like they didn't spend their resources in the right areas. And I don't think they improved enough as a football team to make a gigantic leap. At least enough to usurp what I think are going to be 3 solid teams when you talk about the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens. So that ends up just inevitably leaving them at 4. But what's their win-loss record going to be, right? Are they going to be a 4-win team, a 5-win team, 6-win team? What does that even mean now that there's an extra game? The math is all thrown off. Right? So, to me, this Bengal team feels very 6 wins, but I don't know if that's 7 wins in today's NFL, right? Like that could, like a 6-10 team could be equivalent to like a 7-10 team nowadays with the extra game. So what 6 or 7 wins is probably what I would peg this team at. That offensive line, it's not robust and it's very fragile, to be honest with you. Jonah Williams has a history of injury. He hasn't played a full season in his career. He's one of the main anchors there at left tackle. You got Riley Reif, who's older. He doesn't have an injury history, but he is older. And then, as a friend of mine used to say, it's a S show in the middle, pretty much. You got 2 anchors, and then whatever you got going on in between is what you got going on in between there. You're trying to figure it out. You're probably not going to figure it out until the start of the season. So that's their situation with the offensive line to protect their prize asset. And look, I love that they have all these wide receivers. Having all those wide receivers are really good. But how effective can these wide receivers be if Joe Burrow always has to break the pocket, has to break contain, has to try to figure out different ways to get guys open or to get the ball to guys, or has to throw across his body a ton? I just don't think this is putting him in a great situation. And I think some of that showed at the beginning parts of camp where he didn't look as sharp as you wanted him to look, partly because, probably he was feeling a little bit of the pressure. I know they're not going to actually hit him in practice, but, if you come from getting an ACL injury and all of a sudden somebody's blowing up Michael Jordan in the middle, similarly to how you got your ACL tore in the first place, it's probably going to throw you off a little bit there. The run game is about the same there. I don't know if that's going to be any different there. In the defense, hey, look, Jesse Bates is a really good player. We have all gone through the whole, is Jesse Bates really good? Like, where is he at argument already. I'm not here to relitigate into that. But I don't like the rest of that secondary. I know people keep talking about I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Awuzie.
Yeah, Awuzie, my bad. And Trey Wayne's being big contributors this year, but they haven't been good in 2 years. So I don't know if that's something you can reasonably rely on as them being kind of anchors by any means there. Linebacking's a huge question mark. I don't like what they did with the defensive line. I have been on record, not the big Trey Hopkins fan. Don't think those sacks were really kind of reflective of the kind of player he's going to be once you pay him. So I don't know if that's even an upgrade.
You say
Henderson? He meant Hendrickson.
Trey Hendrickson, yeah.
I thought I said Hendrickson, my bad. And you're getting DJ Reader back. That's cool. You got a decent middle right there. Like, it's not bad in the middle, but I've seen I don't want to compare him to the 0-16 Browns, but the 0-16 Browns did have a really good interior defensive line at that point. It just didn't matter because you couldn't get any pressure on the edges. So I don't know how effective that alone is going to be. I don't know how effective Jesse Bates alone is going to be when I don't trust anything around it. And I don't know how effective Joe Burrow alone can be, how many games he can win you when I don't trust a single thing about anybody who's within that first 5 players in front of him, right? When I don't trust that whole situation, we don't know what Jamar Chase is going to be in the NFL yet. We are reasonably thinking that he's going to be a good player. We don't know. He has no tight ends. That's still a thing, right? He has no tight ends. So when I look at this looks to me like a 6 to 7 win team. Since you're adding that extra game, 6.5 would be the over and under in Vegas. I would probably feel more comfortable taking the under than I would take the over. So that's where I'm at with the Bengals. I hope they get better because I do see a lot of pieces there that can, with a good GM and a competent strategy and a better coach than Zach Taylor, I feel like that can be a contending playoff team, probably within the next 3 years. But right now, I don't trust the direction they're going. I don't trust the people making the decisions to make the right decisions. And when that's the case, you could waste a lot of talent that way. And I hope that doesn't happen for Cincinnati.
Yeah, so before I go with mine, here's a super chat for Gavin. Bro, my bad if I botched your last name. Hawk?
Hawk. Yeah, it's going to be Hawk, yeah.
$2 Canadian just to reflect on Matt Canada and the Steelers here. That I know Tony hasn't had. Yeah, I know. It didn't
well.
Listen, it wouldn't be AFC North talk if during our record prediction someone didn't predict the Steelers to only win 6 games. Like it's a tradition.
Okay, that wasn't me.
I'm saying every year. It's a tradition. So you pass the baton on, Quincy. Sonny, you're up next year.
Wait, is that true? Does Vegas have the Bengals set at 9?
No, they're at 6.5. 6.5,
like you said.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't even know that. Huh? Look at me.
No, and I just looked up all the lines, and my picks are incredibly chalk. So I'm disappointed in myself.
Here we have for Professional Chaos says, what are everybody's thoughts on extra games personal? I would rather have one more playoff game. I mean, they have in theory one more playoff game because there's one less bye, right?
Yeah, the 7th. They added the 7th playoff team, which added an extra game. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I'm just gonna go on record here. They should get rid of that first bye. Like, they should just get rid of the bye at this point. You know what I mean?
8 teams.
Yeah, just add the extra freaking team.
An 8th team? You're gonna have losing teams get in at 8 though.
You always get losing teams, and the NFC East.
I mean, now you are because it's 7-9 or because 17.
That's not even because of that. It's the NFC East. It's the NFC East that
well, that's true. Most, that's true. We haven't had a wild card 7-9.
Last year, with the Dolphins would have been in at 10-6. You know what I mean? So who cares if you get a losing team in there? I feel like it's better for all the teams, and it's better for competitive balance if everybody just plays that week. When you just have one team get the bye, it just leads to a bunch of weird garbage going on. And if you're getting that bye because you like got a weird tiebreaker, it's just stupid. Just, just play whoever, right? If you get a cupcake that first playoff game and you beat them, good. But in the playoffs, you should win every week you're eligible to play in order to win the championship. And I definitely didn't think the double buys made sense.
No, the double bye was the best.
Yeah, the
double bye was the
made
best.
No sense.
Single bye is bad.
Why are we giving second place the same reward as first place? What's even the point, right?
No, you get home field advantage if you're first. No, it's different. By the way,
Yeah,
going to this
home
question,
field advantage over the first team, over the second team,
over the second team, or over everyone, including the second team.
It's a
going to his question about the 17th game. I don't like it. And again, the NFL has already become a war. It's a war of attrition already by the end of the season with some of these teams, right? The Steelers were very much in that last year when you look at their roster at the end of the year, and it's only this is only going to make that worse over time. So I'm not a fan of the 17th game.
The 17th game for me, I think you got rid of one preseason game that was meaningless. I like the thought of it, but the scheduling is weird. I could have sworn, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Browns and the Ravens play 2 weeks in a row this season.
No, not 2 weeks in a row, but two.
Well,
for the Browns it is.
It goes.
The Browns have a bye week. The Steelers the Ravens get to play the Steelers in between there.
In between that. Okay.
It's terrible.
That scheduling is weird. That's weird.
The NFL's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I get why it happened, because they're trying to make these division games happen at the end of the season rather than like last year where like some teams had like 4 division games at the beginning of the year where they're not really as impactful or as broadcastable. So like, I get why they did that. And if it's going to lead to stuff like that happening, look, it's going to happen to the Browns one day. So as much as I'm enjoying it being unfortunate for the Ravens, it's going to happen.
Well, but the problem here is that's a huge division matchup this year. I think all of us are going to put those teams 1-2 in the division. And if anything, Lamar goes down, Baker goes down, Nick Chubb goes down right before those 3 games, you missed both. This happened to the Steelers and Ravens like 7 years ago. It was Byron Leftwich and Charlie Batch that had to start twice in 3 weeks, or maybe it was Dennis Dixon. I can't remember exactly, but it was like Ben got hurt and he missed both games against the Ravens because they played twice in 3 weeks. I hate that schedule.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for the Ravens this year. It definitely is. Look, you won, close contact because your quarterback don't want to get that jab for whatever reason. You won close contact away from him. Hey, he's out for 3 division games or maybe even 2.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful, real vigilant. It's going to be an interesting NFL season because there's more games than there's ever been, and there are more complex factors going on that I'm not even going to try to even touch on in dynamics going on this year than ever. You thought last year was interesting. This year is going to be a whole different level of that.
Yeah. Okay. So Jake Rock says, not to say Baker isn't better than your average QB, but if you put Burrow in the Browns team, I believe they become instant AFC North favorite. Okay. Interesting.
I love Bengals fans.
I hear all this.
I love Bengals fans. I love Bengals fans.
If you insert X quarterback into what does that? How do you even argue against that? It's a completely nonsensical argument. You're just saying it at this point. You just say it. Just say, I think Joe Burrow is better than Baker Mayfield, and then give me reasons why you think that is. But that's just come on, man.
Shout out to Jake Rook. I like that comment. Anyway, so for me,
if you put Baker on the Ravens, maybe you get better wide receiver play. I don't know. Who knows, right? Oh yeah, you can't disprove it. Prove me wrong. What are you gonna do? Plug it in and Madden and simulate it? Is that factual? Okay.
So 4th for me, Bengals. A lot of things you guys said. I think they are around a 5-win team. I had a big problem when I heard that Joe Burrow is flinching or being overly protective of his knee when he knows right now nobody's gonna hit him. What's gonna happen when they know they're hunting him? Literally, the league isn't noticed that this dude is, and that is understandable. And I think way back I said, I don't think the Bengals should rush Joe Burrow, right? Like if he's not ready for week 1, they should not rush him. That O-line got a little bit better, but is it good enough to be ready, right? And again, if I'm playing the Bengals, Ravens play the Bengals week 1, the first thing I'll say, let's just blitz him. Let's just blitz him and hit him. Just hit him and let's see how he reacts, right? Because when he was healthy, that's what the Ravens did, and he had issues just with the whole amount of pressure coming all different ways. Now he's overly careful with the knee. I'm worried. And I'm a Burrow fan-ish. I mean, I like how he plays. Obviously, I don't want him to win because he's in the division, but I like his play. I think that he's a really good quarterback. I think the defense, I will say this, I think the defense got a little bit better. I think the defense will play better. And the other thing that the Bengals have, and I said this a couple years ago to Ace, this is the worst luck with injuries, man. It's like they had the pieces and then boom, injuries start hitting them. I don't know what's there in Cincinnati that just I had no idea.
It's in Baltimore now.
It's getting in Baltimore with the wide receivers. I can tell you that too. But I don't know. I think that the Bengals, it's a team that is a couple pieces away, and in my opinion, it's a good offensive line away for being contending. In my opinion, which is not. It's hard. It's very hard to get the offensive line right. It's not as hard as the quarterback, but it's up there, right? So I have the Bengals as a 5-win team. And before we go to the Super Chat, this is how you guys, this is you have it. And Ace was right, man.
Wow.
People, Steelers 4th.
I do not, and people keep saying this like I just pick what the polls are. I do not.
No. I'm not saying that. Yeah. I'm not saying that. I just
fall that way. I don't know if it fell that way this time, but
That's an upset. The Steelers won by 21 points.
No, 11.
Oh yeah, 11. My bad.
11.
I can't do math.
But yeah.
only 228 votes. Our polls are averaging around 1,000, so make sure you go vote. But yeah, for the 4th place right now, or last place, we had the Steelers 4th winning that. Okay.
Yeah.
Go with a Super Chat before we throw it to Tony. Professor Chaos again. Not to say Mahomes is bad, but if he was on the Bengals, I still would not think the Bengals will win the division.
Can't disprove it. You can't disprove it.
It's true.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to disagree on that one, though. I think Mahomes makes them a contender at least.
Mahomes
I don't know. You saw him in the Super Bowl last year with no offensive line. He wasn't very productive. I mean, who's to say that's not who we would be without an offensive line? I mean, we don't know. We don't know.
We don't know. That's true.
Tyreek Hill was not helping them block last in the Super Bowl, and he looked beatable. He looked
Could
beatable.
Patrick Mahomes make Tyreek Hill look like a good receiver?
We don't know this. We don't know.
Yeah,
We could never know. We could never know. Maybe Tyreek Hill makes Patrick Mahomes look like a good quarterback. Who knows?
Oh, he's a system quarterback. I like this. This. Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback. You never know. You can't know.
He got all that talent.
We haven't seen him outside of Andy Reid's system.
Yeah,
so.
we've only seen him with the Hall of Fame coach and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Let's see him be on the Bengals. Yeah, let's see. Now, Patrick Mahomes is not legit until he plays on a losing team because we want to hold supporting staff against each other sometimes.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah.
Talk to us about our promo.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to tell you about our friends over at Manscaped. Attention, listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston. Do we have a pube problem? If so, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation and brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the Performance Package 4.0. The orbits in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tools for the job from the leaders in male grooming. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. But you have to use our promo code AFC North Talk. All one word, AFC North Talk. You can see it at the bottom of your screen there. Ready for an out-of-world experience, fellas? Look no further than the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped that has just taken off in not only the United States, but also in Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and even Singapore. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your whole solar system. First scheduled for liftoff, the new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. This spaceship is here to guide you on a journey to trim your body, balls, butt, and even Uranus. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 4000K LED spotlight you can turn on and off when needed for a more precise shave throughout your travels across the universe. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker. It's like having a little astronaut to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear. The Weed Whacker is waterproof, has a 9,000 RPM motor, powered by 360-degree rotary dual blade system. Don't forget to use the Crop Preserver ball deodorant and the Crop Reviver to help your little planets be on their A game while feeling the sun's heat. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag, Abort Hairy Balls, and Buzz Lightyear That Woody with Manscaped. So get 20% off and free shipping. But again, you got to use our promo code AFcnorthtalk at manscaped.com.
Dude,
Did you write that?
Did I write that? No, that I'll give our sales guy the credit. He wrote that.
Okay, I was gonna say that was really good.
Yeah, they have to have like a comedian or something.
They have some of the best ad copy in the game.
Yeah, they're giggling like little teenagers at a sleepover when they wrote that one.
Okay, so let's talk about number 3. I think Tony, go ahead, man.
All right, here we go. I said this. I was on Locked On Steelers today with Chris Carter. He asked me what I was going to put the Steelers record at. I told him not happy. A lot of Steelers fans, the Steelers fans who I've told what I think the Steelers record is going to be this year, not happy with Tony. But look, and I get that there's always a confidence in Pittsburgh with this team.
Let's say who it is first. Let's say it.
Well, it's the Steelers. No, the Steelers are 3. The Steelers are 3. The Steelers are 3 for me. It's a question of what their record's going to be. Look, I have 3 big questions about this Steelers team this year. Number 1. How Matt Canada is this Matt Canada offense going to be, right? I think we all know this offense is going to be different. The question is not, is it going to be different or not? They're going to run the ball a little more. They might run a little more play action, right? They're probably going to use a little bit more motion, but how much more, right? Ben Roethlisberger in his last 32 starts in the National Football League has 1,300 passes, 650 passes on average over the last 2 seasons. That number is likely to come down this year. I think we all know that. But how far down? Are we talking about 600, from 650 to 600 to 550 to 500? Baker threw the ball 480 times last year. I mean, Lamar threw it like 350. Okay, I think we know it's not going to be I don't think Ben's going to be doing a lot of QB option this year, so it's likely to be a little higher than Baker. But is it going to be a little higher than Lamar? But is it going to be at that Baker number? I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to go from throwing the ball 650 times down to under 500. I'm interested to see just how Matt Canada, this offense, is going to look. Question 2. This team lost a lot of good defensive talent. How far, what happens to this defense, right? How far does it fall? This has been a team for the last 2 years defensively that has been thought of in the conversation for the best defense in the National Football League. This defense has won them games over the past 2 seasons. Will that still be the case in 2021? Losing Bud Dupree, losing Mike Hilton, losing Cam Sutton, losing Vince Williams. How much of an effect does that have on this defense? Does it drop them from one of the top defenses to a top 5, to a top 10? Top 15? How much are we talking here with this drop-off? Interested to see that. Question 3, though. And this goes to like the philosophy, right? What were the Steelers doing this year? I've heard people say the Steelers are betting on Ben at 39 years of age. Very clearly, they are not betting on Ben at 39, right? That's why they took a running back, an offensive lineman, and a tight end who can block with their first, two offensive linemen, their first 4 picks in the draft, right? This is an offense very much saying, Ben, you are not going to throw the ball 650 times this year. This is a team, and I wouldn't even say that they're betting on the running game or anything like that. This is a team that is betting on Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin to get these young guys. They're going to have 9 players this year, 9 players who are going to be key contributors to this team who are either rookies or second-year players, right? They lost 9 starters this year. They're replacing almost every single one of those guys with either rookies or second-year players. This is a team that has done very well in building a team this way, but they're hitting the accelerator this year when it comes to developing young talent. And they're also saying that as a team, hey, we think we can get a little worse talent-wise. No doubt this team got worse this year talent-wise, but that if we change the philosophy up, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that we can be maybe not better, but just as good as this team was a season ago. Look, I can't sit here and tell you today that I know exactly how this team is going to play this year. No Steeler fan can. And what I'm interested to see from Steeler fans is those fans out there who feel like there's no way this team doesn't win 11 games. There's no way this team doesn't win 12. Again, Ben Roethlisberger at 39 years of age, changing out the entire offensive line and losing as much defensive talent as this team lost. I just can't sit here today and say, well, yes, they're definitely going to have a winning season. A lot of people tell me, no, Ben and Tomlin have never had a losing season. This goes back to the whole past performance is not indicative of future performance, right? Just because they haven't done it doesn't mean it can't happen. Okay, the Cleveland Browns had never won a playoff game before last season. Bill Belichick had 20 straight winning seasons until last season, right? Until he didn't, right? This is how it happens. So it's not like the Steelers can't have a losing season. I'm going to predict them right here at 9-8. Do I think they could be a 10-win team? Do I think they can be an 11-win team? Yes, I do. But I also think that I think 8-9 or 7-10 is very much in the realm of possibility as well. And so that's my range for this team, but I'm going to put them squarely at 9-8 and likely a 6th or 7th seed in the playoffs.
Ooh, playoffs. Okay. Ace.
Yeah, it's not time for the Bengals to go to the playoffs yet. This is going to be my third place team in the North. And I think the Bengals, this isn't going to be the year for them to look for the playoffs. I've said numerous times on Twitter that that's going to be next year. But I do think that this team will take a step forward this season for several reasons. Like, we talk about the offensive line, but we don't talk about how bad of a coach Jim Turner was. Jim Turner was easily one of the worst offensive line coaches probably of all time. And he's going out and heading out of the door. And they're bringing back Frank Pollock. And Frank Pollock is a guy that took a Bengals line in 2018 that was not good at all. Probably personnel-wise, probably even, I'd argue to say, worse than this unit that we have. It made them somewhat commendable, right? So I think that Frank Pollock coming back, introducing the zone scheme, is not only going to make the offensive line better, it's going to make Joe Mixon better. That was the year where he was the leading rusher in the AFC. And so I think that's one of the issues that the Bengals had last year is they just didn't run the ball. Like, there were points where they didn't run the ball until, I want to say, Joe Burrow was gone. Like, Joe Mixon shut down. Like, for the most part, Zach Taylor was trying to run NFC West, I guess, offense in the AFC North. And that you just can't just throw the ball all over the place and not run the ball in the AFC North. So I think the run game is going to be better. The defense, I definitely think, is going to be better. We talk about Trey Waynes. I'm not a huge Trey Waynes guy. I'm not a huge Cheeto guy. I do think Cheeto's underrated, but there's no question in my mind that they're going to be better than what the Bengals corners were last year because the Bengals weren't healthy at corner last year. They lost William Jackson III. They didn't have Trey Waynes. They had Darius Phillips starting, who's now going to be their backup nickel corner, who's going to, practice and be in the mix with Mike Hilton. So I definitely think that they'll be better. Now, they have to stay healthy. Sonny talked about that earlier. That was another thing. They lost all of their good players last year. They lost A.J. Green. They lost DJ Reader. They lost Geno Atkins. Geno was playing with one arm. I mean, a lot of these guys, they pretty much did not have last year. C.J. Uzomah went down week 2. Joe Burrow went down. They literally lost everyone. So if the Bengals can just stay healthy, they should definitely win more games. And even though they only won 5 games, they were in about 7 of those other games that they lost were only by, I think, 4 or 5 points or less in terms of their losses. So I think that they'll move forward. And then you also talk about some of the teams that are on the schedule, the Jets and the Lions and the Jaguars. I think that those are winnable games for the Bengals to actually be able to win. The ones that I don't see them winning, Packers, I got them splitting with the Browns. I have them splitting with the Steelers. I have them losing the Chiefs. I have them losing the 49ers. I mean, these are just good teams. I even have them losing the opener against the Vikings because I'm just not sure where Joe Burrow's psyche is. Now, the Joe Burrow thing, I think one thing that was left out is that was an interview that he did right before a practice where he literally lit up the entire defense and finally looked like himself. I think Jason Lockenford talked about it. But the truth is, yeah, he is coming off of a knee injury, and everybody that's coming off of a knee injury is definitely going to have to get past the mental hurdle. But that's one of the reasons that I like Joe Burrow, because mentally is strong. He came out and said all of that and then responded. And as I just read on Twitter a few minutes ago, apparently he just had his second best practice of the preseason or whatever. And I think it's still kind of early to expect him to just, come in and hit the ground running. So I think Joe Burrow will be just fine. The offensive line does concern me. Seeing Mike Jordan even though it's the first unofficial depth chart, seeing Mike Jordan just on that line mentally is very concerning. But I don't think that there's much that we can read into that. I don't think that it's going to be him as a part of that starting offensive line. From what I'm hearing, there's just some, I'm not going to say maturity issues, but they're wanting Jackson Carman to really grasp this opportunity and really own it and come in as a vet. And from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like that's been the case. So I think that that's a tool to motivate him to see that he's third on the depth chart. But even if he isn't there, I honestly think that Deontay Smith kid, that we took in the 4th round. From what I've heard from Frank Pollock and Zach Taylor talked about him, he talked about the guy like he's a starter. So if I had to put my money on it, I think that he would probably be your left guard, and I think Quentin Spain would be your right guard. So that wouldn't be any Michael Jordan. Tony, you had something?
Well, I was gonna say, wasn't he a tackle? Did I remember that
He
wrong?
was a tackle.
They're moving him to guard.
He's got some amazing length. He was one of the guys that they picked up, and from what I heard, listening to Zach Taylor, he was able to pick up the guard stuff that they wanted to do right away. Apparently, they love his ability to take coaching and execute it immediately and learn it on the fly. And apparently, he was so impressive that they've kind of thrown him up into that battle. It kind of seems like Deontay Smith and how he's carrying himself is what they want Jackson Carman to do, from what I've been seeing. But even from an offensive line standpoint, Bobby Hart in comparison to Riley Reef is completely night and day. Like Sonny said, though, Jonah Williams has to prove that he can stay healthy. I've been a big critic of Jonah Williams. A lot of people have given me a hard time about being so critical of him. But when you take an offensive lineman that high, you need him to be there, especially when you don't have depth on this offensive line. You're one injury away from Fred Johnson starting left tackle, and that is just not something that is cool. And then you talk about the linebacking core, that's another question mark, but I do feel like Logan Wilson will be way better than my guy from Baltimore that we signed last year. I think he will be a higher upgrade over him. I think Jermaine Pratt is just what he is. He's just an average linebacker. But I think overall the Bengals defense will improve. The offense, we still have to see. I think with Joe Burrow, they'll be better. But the one thing that makes me feel like this team, and I'll say it, I think that they're going to be 8-1. The reason that I say that is I think Zach Taylor's job is on the line. So he can't come in here and not win six. Well, I think 6 games he gets out of here, but 7 to 8 games he has to win or he's out of here. So I think with that pressure, they'll sneak one in. And I've got them. I think the over and under is 6.5, but I think that they're going to go and exceed expectations with Joe Burrow for a full year.
Cute.
Maybe when I'm in Vegas, I might have to take that under. But yeah, I'm gonna put the Steelers here at 3. The math here is really simple for me. I know a lot of people like to point at that last game, and we talk about all the things the Steelers have not done as a franchise. One of the things they haven't done is also lose with Big Ben in Pittsburgh to the Cleveland Browns. But that happened last year, so these things can't happen. They can't go under 500. I don't think it's going to get to that point with this team this year, because as much as we want to joke and laugh at the Pittsburgh Steelers for how they ended the season, and it is meme worthy and it is hilarious. Big Ben cried on national TV. Let's never forget that. That man shed tears on
His
NBC.
good friend retired. I mean, my goodness.
His good friend snapped the ball over his head and he lost the football game in embarrassing fashion. That's
also
I was trying to do this for you, man. Never forget. Big Ben did that.
All right.
In front of 25 million football fans, according to Nielsen on NBC. That's always gonna be there. It's always gonna be there, baby. But they did go 11-5, and it wasn't just the big
12-4. 12-4.
Oh, they did go 12-4.
They went 12-4.
They feel really 11-5. They do.
Yeah. They lost 5 games, but that was one of them with a push.
Yeah. One of them. Which one was that? Was that?
Can't remember. Game? Mine escapes me. It's been so long. That's been like 8 months.
Was it a home game? Was it a home game?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. I'd have to look back. I'd have to look back.
Must have been bad if you had to wipe it from your memory, because you haven't even wiped Tebow. I mean, goodness. But when we talk about
enjoy this.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy this for a very long time. When we talk about the Steelers, we laugh and joke about them. They were a 12-4 football team. It would be pretty wild. Like, I don't think their roster has gone through so much of a change, or that Ben's going to be so bad that they're going to go from 12-4 to below 500. That would be shocking if they were to do so. Look, Alex Highsmith looked really good at that Hall of Fame game. I think he's going to probably be able to provide a little bit more than what you've gotten out of Bud Dupree last year. So I think he's going to be a good player, as long as they don't kind of like mess this up and do the whole Stiller thing where like we got to go seniority and put Melvin Ingram out there, who's a fossil at this point. I don't think he should really be taking any starter snaps away from Highsmith. I'm not a big fan of Melvin Ingram right at this. When we look at them defensively, they're probably going to be around the same that they were last year, probably a little worse. I trust them to kind of reload there. The big questions offensively. The floor for them is really what happened in 2019 when they went 8-8, right? I think all things go bad. You'll go to Mason Rudolph eventually, and you'll do the Matt Canada offense with Mason Rudolph, right? The one reason they can go under 500 is if Big Ben is as terrible as he was those last 5 games of the year, and then they don't ever pull him, right? If those two things happen, yeah, they could go under 500. I don't think it's very likely that those two things happen. So for the Steelers, I think they feel like what would traditionally be a 9-win team, a 9-7, 8-8 team, just kind of like, we have misused the term mediocre in modern society. It used to just mean kind of like average and unremarkable instead of terrible, like we think of it now. But they're around that kind of mediocre range where it's like, hey, I don't think they could win a playoff game at this point, but I don't think they're going to be an embarrassment or below 500 by any means. So, 9-win football team that would probably be 10-7 in today's NFL with the extra game. So 9.5 probably should be the over-under, and I would probably feel more comfortable taking the under on that as well. I'm not giving out betting advice, by the way. I'm not encouraging anybody.
I like it. We got to have Quincy's Gambling Corner coming out. A new segment on the show. I like it.
I don't gamble personally, but I know people who do.
Quincy's Lock of the Week.
So right now, Tony has them playoff. Q, do you have them in the playoffs?
Oh, no, they're not going to make the playoffs in the AFC.
Okay, so
with 10 wins. No, you got to get at least 11.
Okay. I have, last year at least you had to win 11. Remember, a 10-win team didn't make it last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've added more and more quarterbacks to this conference, which is just going to make it even more difficult than it was last year, to be honest. Like, nobody's left. Has anybody left? Because we were thinking Watson was going to leave. We don't know what's happening with Watson.
Rivers is no longer.
Oh, yeah.
But they made the playoffs. I'm saying, like, that team got worse.
Yeah,
the playoff team that got worse.
True. But somebody's going to probably, I think I don't know. The Dolphins don't really have a plan at quarterback. Yeah, maybe 10 wins does get you in the playoffs.
There we are. 10 wins in a playoff team. All right.
Okay. By the way, Steelers fan, this
coming around.
Q went from 4-12 last year,
6-10 last year. 6-10 last year.
To 9/10 wins and a possible playoff berth. That's fair.
Playoff worth by technicality, dog. Like,
yeah, he's got to win solid playoff. He took the pen out and put him in the playoffs, which I respect. I did the same thing. I think 9 wins get you in this year.
I think more than likely they're going to have a terrible division record, which is going to keep them out the playoffs because that's a big tiebreaker in these things.
The conference record when it comes to wild card. Yeah. Well, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Record if they don't have a good division record,
Yeah. Ever since Quincy put on that Steelers apparel, he has not been the same.
Steeler fan, I like it. Listen, welcome to the club. We accept you.
Ever since I predicted them to go 6-10, and they won 11 straight games to start that season. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna let it die before I call it dead. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta see the body first before I'm predicting anything.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not even the post. It's gotta be in the ground. Like, and I'm gonna wait a week to make sure the coffin don't kick. And then be okay. I'm gonna make sure that one in the dirt before I start celebrating it.
For me, I have the Steelers exactly at 9 wins. Since I was looking at this schedule, so it's funny that both Tony and Q had them at 9. Look, I feel, this is just me, the Steelers you can see them trending down as they were winning. They got to the 11 win on the offensive side, but that defense was still kicking, right? That defense was so solid. The offense is like, all year, banging here, banging there. But my turning point was in that Ravens game, the Bud Dupree went down. And after that, in my opinion, that defense wasn't the same. And they still played well, but it wasn't as dominant, or at least it didn't feel as dominant. Remember, the Steelers were in a lot of national games and the back end of the season. But the defense didn't feel as dominant. So the question for me is, can Highsmith, I know Q talk about this, because Highsmith just play like Bud Dupree, right? Can he be that guy? Because T.A. Watt's going to ball out. But if you can just essentially scheme T.A. Watt out, And corners, remember corners, there's a question mark there. So if you scheme T.A. Watt out and the corners are not here playing like they were playing before when there was two really good rushers out there, it's going to be a problem. If Highsmith can supplant Bud Dupree and play at least as good, then the Steelers, in my opinion, are going to be 10-win team. 10, they can even sneak that 11 win. Now, the other way, I have them at 9, but if the defense takes a big step back, I can see them going 7 or 8 wins. And it's all hinges on the defense. I actually don't think your offense is going to be that much better. Look, I don't put stock in the preseason games, but when you see the Steelers go out there, trout their number 1 wide receiving core group, and they're dropping, I'm like, yo.
One drop. I mean, it was one drop. It wasn't a good drop. It wasn't a good drop. It wasn't a good drop. But it was only.
And Deontay also dropped one, right?
Well, can I do a former player take?
Deontay had to drop. My goodness, I'd have gone nuts.
Can I do a Brandon Marshall former player? No, this is a Steve Smith one. You know how like maybe see what I don't like about Chase Claypool not going for it on that ball and dropping it there. If football is a muscle memory game, so when you don't build up that muscle memory, even in the preseason, even in the Hall of Fame game, you're just building yourself up to be soft in the regular season, and you're not going to make those catches. So with Chase Claypool,
I actually agree with this take. This is not even like a meme. This is I actually agree with that.
What Chase Claypool did right there is evidence of weak culture in Pittsburgh.
Okay, now we're going too far. Now we're going too far.
Muscle memory. They're not going.
I agree with the first part,
and they're letting guys get away with taking vacations on the football field. That tells me that wide receiver room is soft. And let me tell you something, Michael Irvin. If I was on the team, we wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
Nope.
Jarvis Landry wasn't having that in Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
You know,
And the other thing I will say here is on the offensive side, although I don't think it's going to be sustainably changed, and this is why. Big Ben is used to throwing a lot of the ball, like Tony said. If that game is tight, right, and they're calling just run so they can do play option, I don't know if Ben is just going to sit back there and just let the ball run. Because I think he will say, like, no, I can take over this game. It's just me. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm back. And I can see him just checking the play call and just let's you pass.
See, I get your thing there. I'm more worried about like third quarter, like down by 10, right? And Canada's like, let's keep running the ball. Like, let's not get away from our identity here. And Ben's like, nah, actually, we're gonna start throwing here.
Even if you're losing by 4 or 5, I think Ben by now, I mean, whatever many years in the league, he's used to that, right? He's used to be like, no, the ball's in my hands. I'm gonna win this game. And the problem is, if there's a lot of tight games, which I think is what I will say for the Steelers, at the beginning of the year, that's fine. And also as the year will go by, if he's also back into the high attempts, that's when the arm gets tired. That's when you might see mistakes from Ben. Go ahead.
I got one more question about the Steelers for all of you. Over under 1,000 yards for Najee Harris rushing.
I think it's probably going to be at like 800, 880.
I got him over because I think you guys are he's going to be the workhorse.
Yeah,
I have them.
I did not see an offensive line there. Well, he wasn't playing with the starting offensive line, so it's kind of hard to tell there. But
750 is what I would say, around there.
Like 880. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be able to get enough push significantly on that offensive line consistently enough to be able to justify giving him the amount of carries he would probably need to get to over 1,000.
Yeah.
That's just where I'm at with him.
I'm over 1,200 yards. 1,200 yards. I'm going big. Going big.
By the way, real quick, Tony, this is like this notion that like Ben's gonna like. It's one of the more interesting notions in NFL that like Ben's gonna finally give in and be peaceful with the offensive coordinator when he's 39 years old, when he hasn't done that in his. I'm not saying he.
You mellow out in your old age. Let me tell you, I'm 36. I've mellowed out. You should see the videos I did 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, man, I had questions about Tom Brady being able to do that exact same thing. I was like, man, it's a weird change for somebody that old. Sometimes it could work, sometimes it doesn't work. But it's one of the more intriguing things to watch. Is like, is he really going to be out here listening to Matt Canada, who's only coached college? Like, is Ben going to be out here putting his ego aside?
Yeah, and where it really gets interesting is if they struggle early, how much does that become a toxic relationship? Because if things are going well, obviously they'll be fine, right? If they beat the Bills, they start the year 1-0, and they beat what was the second best team in the AFC, then they'll be fine. But if that game starts slowly, then yeah.
So here are the polls for third. So it looks like the Steelers are finishing fourth and third, both.
That is impressive. Now this I would be very, very impressed to see.
Yeah. I'll be too. Okay, so for the next two, we're gonna combine, guys. We're gonna go 2-1.
It's good. Okay? I'm glad.
Tony, who's your 2-1?
I'm glad we're combining these because I have them tied. And the reason for that is I think one of these teams is going to be significantly better than the record I give them here, but I think one of these teams is probably going to be a little worse than the record. And I can't decide which one because they have like open questions, big open questions. Now, I wrote down 3 questions for each team. You'll notice that 2 of these 3 questions for both these teams are kind of. Is that really a question mark? Okay, question 1 for the Browns. Quincy's gonna love this one. Sorry, Quincy. Odell Beckham Jr. So look, the whole OBJ thing. I know Quincy's tired of talking about it. Was this offense better without him? I mean, there's no question. The offense was, without a doubt, better without OBJ. Right? I mean, this was a team that was 23rd in offensive EPA with him, and then 6th in offensive EPA without him. Okay, so they got better last year when he was off the field. Now, how much of that was a product of like this is a team without preseason, young coach, everyone, of course they were going to get better as the year went on. I want to know, right? I want to see this because a player like OBJ, where Baker has to have in the back of his mind, hey, I got to feed OBJ a little bit. Right? How much does that play into how much Stefanski does not want him to be doing that? It's an interesting open question for me. Number 2, Quincy talked a lot about last year about the problems in the secondary that they had. They've rebuilt that secondary, but miscommunication, that's a thing that comes from coaching and from reps and those guys, being on the same page with them. When they're changing out, I believe 3 of the 5 starters, or maybe even 4 of the 5 starters from a year ago in that secondary. So those are guys that all have to be on the same page, and that defensive coaching staff has to get all those guys on the same page early. The big question mark for me here, look, it's Baker Mayfield, right? I mean, I know Browns fans want us to believe this is a kid that has emerged now as a top 10 quarterback who will assert himself as a top 5 by the end of this whole thing, or will continue to ascend, I should say. But here's the thing, and I keep bringing this up, and I know Browns fans don't like it, but look, Jared Goff happened, right? Jimmy Garoppolo is happening before our eyes, and you see this in a Kyle Shanahan / Sean McVay offense. You can hide your quarterback for a little bit, and they have done that, but at some point, the real quarterback comes out to play. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Baker Mayfield this year, but I'm saying it's an open question for me because, and we will find out over the next 2 years which Baker Mayfield this is. Look, at the end of last season, I said Baker Mayfield's a franchise quarterback, and I stand by that. I think there's a better chance that Baker Mayfield continues to play well, but it is an open question mark for me, especially in an offense like this that does so much to protect their quarterbacks. What's that going to be? I have the Browns at 11-6. I also have the Ravens at 11-6. The 2 question marks for me for the Ravens that are kind of nitpicky here. The age of the defensive line, we've talked about this with the Steelers. It's a concern because that defensive line for the Ravens was so good last year, but you got 3 players all into their 30s. So if those guys start to fall off, you got Madubuike, but I don't know, and Sonny, you can correct me. I don't think they have a ton of depth behind that. The second level defenders, I've talked about Patrick Queen. I'm not going to belabor that. Look, this is a team that lost Matthew Judon. They need Patrick Queen to step up year over year. Justin Houston's brought in as more of a pass rusher. I don't think he's going to be dropping into coverage or doing the things that Judon did. And so that's going to be Pernell McPhee. That's going to be Tyus Bowser, and that's going to be
Owe.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, Owe as well. All right, question number 3 for me here with the Ravens. This is a big one. This is my open question. Look, they rebuilt that wide receiver room. Now what? What are you going to do now? Okay, PFF has this thing about why you shouldn't draft running backs in round 1. And one of the points that they make is that it incentivizes you to run the ball, and you shouldn't be running the ball, right? That passing the ball is better. And so when you draft a running back in round 1, you are incentivized to do something offensively that is against better nature. The Ravens have rebuilt this wide receiver room. But does that mean that they are now going to feel like, as an offense, well, we should throw more now. We need to throw the ball more now. And again, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here, because I did say after that last Ravens game that I do think the Ravens need to change up their offensive game plan. I do think they need to do that. I'm just not sure that it's going to be better, right? And that's my open question here. It's like, if this team does start to throw the ball more, I'm not sure that that's a more winning game plan, especially in the regular season, than what this team has done for the past 3 seasons with Lamar. This is a team that if they just continue the course with Lamar, as I've said before, they will win 10, 11, 12, 13 games in the regular season. The problems for them come in the playoffs. But if they try to make Lamar more of a thrower in the regular season. What does that do to this offense? I think it's an open question. I have both the Ravens and Browns at 11-6 this year.
Okay, do you want to say who's the tiebreaker?
Well, I'll give it to the Ravens because they have won 3 out of the last 4 matchups between the two teams. So yeah, I'll give it to the Ravens.
Okay. Ace, 1 and 2.
Yeah, for me, my second team is going to be the Browns. I got a clip that I heard, and it had some pretty interesting details. So I'm going to just go ahead and let this rock.
Last year was sort of a hollow 11-5 season for them. They didn't even score more points than they gave up during the year. They were one of the worst teams by our numbers ever to finish 11-5. They had an unusually healthy offensive line. I think they had 74 out of 80 potential started games started by their 5 guys up front, which is unusual and usually bounces back. They had a great number of turnovers, even though their defensive numbers were not good. They were a bottom 10 defense, but they were a top 10 defense, forcing turnovers per drive. And that's also another stat that usually rebounds the other way from year to year. And you look at their team, I mean, they knew in Cleveland that their defense was shoddy last year, and they brought in a whole raft of new guys. They could have as many as 9 new starters on their defensive side. And certainly you would imagine that'll take a while to work out, get some cohesion going on defense there. So, and it's not definite that they're even that much of a talent upgrade. It seems like they are, but we'll see.
So for me, I think some of the things that he hit on was somewhat on point. I mean, the thing that stuck out to me was the turnovers. I didn't realize that the Browns had so many turnovers last year on defense. I think that they obviously got better with the talent, but as he pointed out, you got 9 new starters on defense. Like, that's going to take some time to kind of gather up together and get together. I think the other concern for me is I think he's right in terms of their firepower. I thought that the Browns should have done a little bit more from the receiving core other than just drafting the kid that they did. Obviously, they have an explosive offense with OBJ, and maybe they're expecting that just bringing OBJ back, that will really unlock the key to this offense. But for me, I think like Tony said, Baker Mayfield, I don't know why it is a foregone conclusion that Browns fans are saying that Baker Mayfield is a top 10 NFL quarterback when he didn't even throw for 4,000 yards last year. In the NFL, it's a quarterback league. And when I look at these losses that I have, because I have the Browns at 10-7, Pat Mahomes, I don't see that happening because you couldn't even beat Chad Henne. Like, you were pretty much blown out in that game until Chad Henne got in. You still couldn't beat Chad Henne. Aaron Rodgers of the Packers, I'm sorry. Justin Herbert, rookie of the year. If they get into a shootout, can Baker be that guy to lift them to the promised land? I'm not sure. The Steelers game, actually, no, not the Steelers game. I'm sorry, looking at the wrong one. I have them sweeping the Steelers. Cardinals game, that's another explosive offense. Talking about AJ Green, D Hop, Rondale Moore.
AJ Green,
Kyler Murray, explosive offense.
AJ Green,
the Rams, that's another one. In New England, I don't know. AJ Green's the second receiver.
No, y'all know that because you spent this whole summer telling me how, like, oh man, AJ Green was really trash for the Bengals last year. That's why they really need to upgrade a wide receiver position.
That is not what I said. You might be talking about Zim or somebody else. I've never called AJ Green trash.
All right, whatever, man. Go ahead.
All I'm saying is, when it comes down to it, for me, the reasons that I picked the losses are primarily the quarterback position. I still think that they're going to be a good team. Do I think that they're going to be a Super Bowl contender? I'm not so sure. And I had a Chiefs fan on, and he made the claim, not me, that he felt like the Browns were the most overrated team in the NFL. I'm not going to go that far because I think that they have talent. But when you consider the Super Bowl teams in this league, are the Browns there? I don't know if they are. I think that they're a good team. I don't know if I can necessarily say that they're a Super Bowl favorite. And so I have the Browns at 10-7. I've got the Ravens edging them out because I looked at the history between the Ravens and the Browns. And the Ravens, I believe, swept them last year, and they've generally kind of been on the winning side of that battle. So it really came down. I kind of had both of them tied, and that was the deciding factor for me was the Ravens game. And so I got the Ravens sweeping them. I got the Ravens at 11-6. The Ravens do have some issues of their own with that age on the offensive line. They got a couple of guys nursing injuries. I don't think that they're going to be serious injuries, though, that are going to drift into the season. But I have heard that Villanueva has a hip issue right now. I've heard that I believe Zeitler is nursing something, but I think that they upgraded their offensive line. They upgraded their receivers. I mean, the Ravens have really pretty much been the leaders of this division for the past 2 years. So I think in order to beat the king of the division, you got to be able to go through them. I don't think that the Browns can. I think that the Ravens are still going to end up on top.
Okay, before I get to Q, so in Ace, just to correct you, last year the Steelers won the division. Although I would have loved to take that, but yeah,
the Browns beat them. Yeah, so they did beat the division leader last year. But
so Gavin says again, just a reminder. Thank you for the donation, by the way. The Browns once went 0-16, and then Eric Spicer.
Spicer, I'm on mute. I didn't realize Spicer. Yeah.
Sorry. Something worth nothing is the Browns playing a third place schedule, playing Houston, New England, and Arizona is much easier than Baltimore playing Indiana, Miami, and the Rams.
I think this is the thing that we do during this time of the year that I think is
it's completely pointless because we don't know who's going to be good or not.
You have no idea. Like at point of the schedule, it comes. How injured is your team going to be versus their team, and how are they playing versus how you're playing? It's trying to do this stuff in August is
impossible. It's
impossible because I mean Joe Burrow could get injured week 4 and then the Bengals win one game. So
Q.
Yeah, Ace, real quick from that clip, can you cite that source?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that too.
I have to go back and look, but he was on the Bengals Beat podcast on August 4th. I have to go back and see.
Oh, okay. I thought it sounded like I'm gonna forget his name. He does the PFF podcast, one of the PFF podcasts.
Yeah, I thought that was the big guy with the long hair. He has like the
Palazzolo. That wasn't. I don't think that was Palazzolo. I don't think that was Steve Palazzolo. I don't think that was. It was the other guy.
All right. Well, I would just be interested to know who said that because a lot of the stuff in there was just intellectually, it was just dishonest there. I mean, we could talk all the live long day about Baker Mayfield, whether you think he's going to be top 5, whether you think he's going to be top 10. Fact is that, a lot of people in this room right now that are talking were crying about Pro Football Focus rankings last year. If you don't think Baker Mayfield's a top 10 quarterback, then you have to have a reckoning with what you think of Pro Football Focus records because Pro Football Focus put him at top 8. That's just fact, right? His QBR, which we love to rag on QBR, but every quarterback who's ever finished top court with the QBR usually wins the MVP, so it must mean something. So, Baker also top 10 in QBR last year, and that's factoring in the slow start to the season that he had. If we just look at the last 10 games of the year, which again, maybe it carries over, maybe it doesn't. There's evidence to suggest it should carry over. One of the reasons I think Browns fans are optimistic is because Baker has never been in the same offense for 2 years in a row. He has not had the same stability that Joe Burrow is getting afforded right now, that Ben Roethlisberger was afforded his entire career, and that Lamar Jackson has been afforded throughout his career. He has not had that. You have to factor that in when you look at some of his older numbers, and also factor in one of those years, Freddie Kitchens was his coach. He coaches tight ends for the Giants now. It was obviously a terrible hire by the organization that he did not overcome at that point in his career. You can hold it against him. You can't, but you have to bring up context in that. When you look at the numbers, when I hear people talk about total yardage, it drives me crazy, as if total yardage is the only thing that matters in football. Is that really what's important? Is how many yards you throw for? And if you factor in the playoff games, he did throw for over 4,000 yards. He threw for 3,500 yards. Okay, he played 2 of those games in 78-mile-per-hour winds where he didn't get over 200 yards. But he still went 11-5. He still was one of the best third down quarterbacks, especially when you look at third and long percentages. He was really good at that last year. And then when we compare him to Jimmy Garoppolo, watch Jimmy Garoppolo and the play calls that Kyle Shanahan uses with Jimmy Garoppolo, where he's running the ball on 3rd and 8 because he does not trust his quarterback, versus what Kevin Stefanski calls for his quarterback, which is usually a lot of passing plays in games that matter. So when we compare these things, it's easy to just say these things broadly. It's easy to just say these things in general when we're talking about Baker. But, I don't think these things ring out true. And if I'm correct on that, he'll have a great year this year because all things are lined up for him to have a great year. So there's really not much else to be said on that argument. Now, when it comes to the Browns, they didn't have a great point differential last year because their defense kept giving up a ton of points. Their defense was awful. Their offense was great. And since they could run the ball, they could play more ball control, which kind of mitigated some of those things. They did replace a ton of guys. 2 of those guys are coming from the same team. So hopefully you would think that kind of communication issue gets cleared up between those two. And it does help that, you did bring in clear guys who are ready to bring in that communication. We talk about Anthony Walker. Literally all people can talk about is his ability to communicate with people and his ability to be a leader on the football field. John Johnson, similarly, right? He's also a very good safety, but that's also something that he does well. So they didn't just bring in a bunch of random dudes. They brought in guys who can specifically get that thing under wraps where it needs to be. And when they were communicating, when Ronnie Harrison was out there, the defense did play a lot better last year at certain points. What do you want to say, Tony?
No, I was going to say both. You're right, because both of those players, I believe, were green dots. I think Anthony Walker was green dot in Indy, and John Johnson, I believe, was green dot.
Yeah, and they started the year with B.J. Goodson, Carl Joseph, and freaking Andrew Sadeo. 3 guys who should never be your green dots at that point, right? And they had to give it to B.J. Goodson at some point. So there was obvious communication errors. I had went off on that all last year. They did something about it. So the defense should be better. If this defense is top 15, this team's going to win, somewhere around the range of 12 games here. When you look at Baltimore, they aren't a bad team. They aren't a team that got worse. I think they did get better. But I do think that the rate that they got better is not at the same rate that the Browns got better. When you look at the Browns, the one thing we watched when we watched this team last year, what we were saying was, hey, the defense is really holding this team back. If they fix that defense, they could just get the league average with that defense, they'll be a dramatically better team than they were this year, and maybe a team that's ready to contend. And I don't know what random Chiefs fans have to say about the Browns. Maybe the Browns were overrated last year, even though they're the team that gave them the closest game in the Super up until they played in the Super Bowl and got blown out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're the only one that made them sweat until they died. But I guess we're super overrated for whatever reason. And we want to paint things like that game was all the Chad
Come
Henne
on,
thing, right?
bro. Y'all were down in that game until Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, and
got
Baker
hurt.
had 3 touchdown drives in a row and got him back in it. What did Chad Henne have to do with the Chiefs defense?
Because Pat Mahomes wasn't playing.
What did Chad Henne
You
have
don't
to do
think
with
that
the
he would have
mishap
put?
with the
You don't
helmet
think he
call?
would have ran up the score? You don't think
We
Pat
don't
Mahomes would have
know
ran it up?
this. We don't know this.
All
He
right.
didn't run up the score in Tampa Bay. How do you know that? How do you know that he doesn't get more pressure? Like, how do you know?
Y'all have the Bucks.
How do we know
now?
these things?
Y'all got
How
the
do we
Bucks
know these
defense
things?
now.
I'm just saying, how do you know these things? You're saying these things. with
It's Pat
certainty, but you don't
Mahomes.
know.
I mean, can
You don't
anybody
know.
stop Pat Mahomes?
Obviously,
Well, look, Pat Mahomes was in that game for 3 quarters, right? And they put up with Pat Mahomes. They put up how many points? Did they even put up 20 with him?
They put up like
They were up in the game. I remember I was looking at it, I was like, it was 19 something.
It was
and then
19.
Mahomes
Yeah,
got
they had
hurt.
19 points through the 3 quarters they played. So
where they were on
I'm
this
just saying
high-scoring
this-
clip.
You guys had an
betting
open
edge-
opportunity to take out the Chiefs, something that rarely people can do. Like,
Yeah.
you usually don't get the break where Pat Mahomes is going to go out and Chad Henne is coming in. If you don't think that that's an advantage for you guys, I don't know.
In
what
the
to say.
Browns, okay, who was the left tackle playing that game, Ace, since you're so thorough on it? Who was the left tackle
You
playing?
said
that
the
game?
left tackle playing
Yeah, who was
for
the left tackle
Chiefs?
for the Cleveland Browns? No, the Cleveland Browns.
For the Cleveland Browns? What
Yeah.
you talking about, your rookie?
No,
Jordan
it wasn't
Wilson?
him. He didn't play that game. He got hurt first play.
I'm just saying Pat Mahomes is like one of the best players
I'm
in the
just
NFL.
saying that Baker came back in that game against the Chiefs defense with Michael Dunn as his left tackle, missing 3 other guys, which, by the way, that stat about the offensive line, yeah, tell me the games where all 5 of those guys were playing together. It didn't
And
give
they
me this
lost with
unusually
Chad Henne
healthy
at the
offensive line.
quarterback. Chad Henne.
Yeah,
The
I don't think
defense was terrible
anything is
last
possible.
year. We know
Anything
this
is
is a team.
possible. Anything is possible.
What's your point?
listen, I am all for mocking the Browns when it comes to that loss to Chad Henne because it is
We'll see.
it is infinitely funny.
We'll
I
see
just
what
don't know that you
happens
should
week
use
one.
that as a way to as a future indicator for how this team's going to play this year.
Yeah,
I do
we
think
know
it's funny
the
they-
defense
I do think it's funny they
terrible.
lost Chad
Chad
Henne.
Henne tore up Andrew Sadeo with
No, I
Travis
don't get me
Kelce
wrong. I don't
and
think it's a
Tyreek
future
Hill.
indicator. I still think the Browns are going to be a good team. The losses that I gave them were against teams with better quarterbacks, and they play Pat Mahomes again. I'm not saying that the Browns are going to be trash. I mean, I just don't think I think that that's valid. I mean, yes, they did almost beat the Chiefs, but let's be real. Pat Mahomes was hurt.
For 1 quarter of that football game.
All right.
For 1
Quincy-
quarter. For
Quincy,
1
you
quarter.
have
And he
the
doesn't play defense. Like, what does that have
2
to
hours.
do?
It's 2
You
hours.
just talked about
Honey,
how
honey,
atrocious
there's-
the Browns defense
this
is, and
is-
you think Pat Mahomes not being in
what
there,
week
he
do they
would've-
play? We need to start
he
that
would've
show at
tore it up.
noon.
What?
Quincy, do you have
The
you have the Browns? You have the Browns winning the division? I'm assuming.
Yes, I have the Browns
he has
winning
the
the
Browns
damn
winning.
division.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I have a
I
winning
thought
division.
just
And
confirming.
they're probably going to edge out the Ravens. What are we talking about? How did the Chiefs get brought up in this conversation to begin with? Why are we talking about
Got to check the
Chad
tape.
Henne?
Yeah,
They on the schedule.
Well, they did lose to Chad Henne. I mean, you know.
Yeah, they lost
They
to
did, like
Chad
it.
Henne. The defense was terrible last year, even though they did do a pretty decent job against Patrick Mahomes in the first 3 quarters. Look, they just couldn't stop that one play to Chad Henne, and they could have had a better drive when they got the interception to Carl Joseph. I'm not saying last year's Browns team was perfect, but they could have benefited from having Odell in multiple games. I look at the Baltimore game on Monday night where they could not get separation one-on-one with Donovan Peoples-Jones and Rashard Higgins against, Marlon Humphreys and Marcus Peters. Like, I feel like Odell would have been a little bit more of a factor in that game, even though if it's just because he could take away a corner and you can get somebody like Rashard Higgins a little bit more open, right? Like, because he hasn't had a big game against Baltimore. I'm not saying that, but just the lack of guys you could throw out there that would be worthy of number one corner. And the same thing happened with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They had an issue moving the ball. We could talk about the Rashard Higgins fumble, helmet to helmet thing. Like, that was something that was a very unfortunate break for the Cleveland Browns. Cost him 7 points. That game's completely different if he scores that touchdown. And we're not talking about the Browns came back.
It's fair.
But they did lose to Chad Henne. Like, at the bottom line here, just to put a button on the conversation.
Yeah, they lost to Chad Henne. But the funny thing is that the further and further away we get for the season, we want to bring up things without the proper context. When we knew what the deal was when we watched the game, and we weren't saying these things fresh off watching 4 quarters of football.
I think somebody said it earlier. My context was just that they were kind of overrated. That's all I was saying.
You telling me, okay, this defense was bad. They went 11-5. They won a playoff game, but they were overrated last year? Did you think they were going to do that last year? How were they overrated?
I think they're overrated coming into this season. Like, if you think that the Browns do you think that y'all are going to win a Super Bowl?
I don't think it's guaranteed they're going to win a Super Bowl, but they're definitely a team that's in the contention to do it if they get everything to go right for them. Like, what's the argument against it?
What's the real argument against it? Kansas City, my friend.
So does it goes? Does Buffalo not a Super Bowl contender? They got their ass.
I think Buffalo's better too.
But
I think Buffalo. We can talk about Josh Allen too.
So just because
I think he's better than Baker too.
You're not a Super Bowl
contender. You guys talk
contender?
about Baker like he was Josh Allen last year. I don't think
we did not, and we still don't. We're not talking about Baker as an MVP contender. Stop putting words in Browns fans' mouths. Nobody is saying this.
Top 10 quarterback.
Top 10 quarterback? That's not an MVP contender. That's not an MVP contender. Top 10 quarterback is a top 10 quarterback. Big Ben's been a top 10 quarterback. How many?
I just seen Baker put up Andy Dalton numbers, and y'all built a statue for him. That's all I saw, because I've been on the team.
Now
you got talent around.
Every time I press
you, I might have put a statue outside of there for Andy Dalton. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Well, how did Andy Dalton rip up your Hall of Fame?
He had a high QBR.
How did he rip up his Hall of Fame safety? How did he do it? How did he go 22 or 22 with
because
5?
He had a good team around him, just like Baker does.
Safety,
it's okay to say that
he's garbage.
The Browns have a good team.
Yes, he's garbage.
He's not garbage. Baker's not garbage. But he's got a good team around him, bro. Like, you guys got the best line.
Okay. Let me.
Oh, now we got the best line. Now we got all this good stuff, but we're fucking overrated, though, right? Like, what's going on?
Kind of overrated. You meant to say kind of. You're kind of overrated. Is what you meant to say.
I don't know what's going on. I just think they could win 12 games. Is that crazy?
Nah,
12 games.
I just think they could win 10.
Not overrated with 12 games. They won 11 last year, and they were
games
injured.
off, bro. With 2 games.
Well, 12 games. Yeah, I mean, you could almost argue like, and you said this already. 12 is the same as 11 this year in some ways.
Yeah. So they're going to be 2 games worse than they were last year. And what's the evidence?
Well.
There's
some questions. I think, Sonny, you haven't given yours.
They had bigger questions last year.
I'm letting Q finish.
They had questions, but they had bigger questions last year. They had a new head coach. Baker was terrible the year before. Like, the questions heading into last year are monumental compared to the questions they got this year, where you're like, can they communicate in the secondary? Can Baker have another good year? Like, these aren't the same level of questions that they had going into last year, where they were like, ooh, this team could be good, they could be awful. Like, we don't know at this point. But yeah, we don't know. Okay, y'all just trolling now with the Baker Mayfield stuff. It's just funny to me. Our fan base that has lost 5 games to Baker Mayfield has ever the
Yo,
audacity
he
to ever
barely
touch
beat
it?
us. He barely beat us last year.
He barely beat y'all how many
He
times?
barely beat us.
How
Like,
many times though has he
yeah,
barely
y'all
beat
were
y'all?
good, but you're
How
also
many
a
times
team
has he
that
barely
went
beat y'all?
11-5 and
How
barely
many
beat the
times has he
Bengals
barely beat
twice.
y'all?
Like, that's not
Just tell me that one. That's
like
all
the
I want to
Packers
know.
aren't doing that. The Ravens aren't doing that. Like,
I just
that's
want
not
to know.
happening.
I just want to know. How many times did he
Okay.
barely beat y'all?
You said how many times did Baker
Yeah.
barely beat us?
How many times?
Sonny, go. Sonny, give your predictions.
ahead,
Go.
go ahead.
Sonny, your go.
Go ahead.
Just let me know.
Before we
Just let me
bring
know.
that, we bring up the 22
Just let me know.
pass.
No, no, how
Sonny,
many times?
Sonny, who you got at 2 and who you got at 1?
I'm gonna
No.
first of all super chat here so we can acknowledge him. Kyle. If
Kyle,
Baker is then the Bengals
Moolenkamp.
will make Burrow Tim Couch. Okay. Let me just be quick because I know we went a little bit far in. I have both the Browns and the Ravens at 12-5. Both of them. Look, I think I had no questions about this Browns offense. If I'm completely honest, I had no question about the Browns offense. Browns offense is the same offense as they came from last year with one more year into the system. Now, I do have a question mark as when OBJ gets integrated. I think Tony brought up that question. I don't know if he's gonna make the offense better or not, but in general, I think at the floor for this offense is what they did last year. I'm not predicting they're gonna be worse. I think that's the floor. Can they be better? Sure. Now, defensive, although they added a bunch of pieces, I have questions of how they're gonna be integrated, meaning how well they're gonna play together. But we cannot dispute that this team is a hell of a team. On paper, not on paper, last year they were able to produce on the field, right? This year they have upgrades. Can their upgrades play and gel together? Maybe. But I cannot predict that they're going to be worse than last year. So I have 12-5. And look, I have the Ravens 12-5 as well because I do think the Ravens also upgraded, maybe not as much as the Browns did, but I think the Ravens, last year we were severely COVID hit. I think that also didn't help. But this Ravens team upgraded in the positions that they needed for the most part. So I had them 12-5. Now I'm predicting, I don't want to make this too long. I'm predicting the Ravens to win the division. But I do have to acknowledge this. If you look at the schedule, if you just purely look at the schedule, the Browns have an edge over the Ravens and just schedule. If the Browns get swept this year by the Ravens, I don't know if you acknowledge this. If the Browns get swept by the Ravens, that will be monumental for the Ravens because the Browns have the opportunity. The Ravens play them essentially for the Browns, it's 2 weeks in a row with a bye in the middle, but the Ravens go and play the Steelers, which is always a hard team to play, right? All division games are hard. So the Ravens go Browns, Steelers, Browns, and then the Browns go Ravens by Ravens. So if the Ravens swept the Browns, I mean, that would be huge for the Ravens. So I'm predicting the Ravens. You can say it's a homer pick. I think both of them are going to be 2-5. I think if you stack the odds are probably better just because of that stretch for the Browns over the Ravens. But can do it. If I'm going to make them tie, I'm going to pick my team. It is.
Absolutely 100% correct though on that. Like that's the monkey on the Cleveland Browns back. We can come up with all these other ones, and they have varying levels of validity in reality. But I think the one that's the most valid is this Ravens thing, right? Like they got swept by the Ravens last year. They shouldn't have gotten swept. They should have found a way to win that game in Cleveland last year. If they cannot beat the Baltimore Ravens at least one out of two times when you have this gigantic advantage of a bye week in between both of your meetings, that's not good, especially when they're playing Pittsburgh in between them. Like you have to prove that you can take the division. That's where you'll prove it. That's where you get the monkey off of your back about never winning this division. That's a huge question mark for this team. Can they beat Baltimore? They got to beat Baltimore in order to be the division winner this year. I do think they finally get over that hump this year because I do think they're more equipped to play defense against them because they're just more athletic. They have more corners. They're going to be, hopefully because they were really unhealthy last year at corner last year. I mean, sometimes down to Robert Jackson, practice squad guys, essentially. So you would hope they would be more healthy. And if they could be more healthy, then they will have a better chance against the Ravens there. But that's going to be the determining factor when it comes to the Browns and winning this division. And it's not something you can say with 100% guarantee that they can do, right? Because only thing we know is that last year the Ravens beat them, and the Browns were a good team last year.
Yep. And I will say this, just to add a little bit more. The Browns had the opportunity to really put pressure on the Ravens if they beat the first of the two, right? Because now you beat the first, and now you have them mentally, right? As a Ravens fan, you beat them the first game. Now they're mentally hurt because they know they have in 2 weeks, and they have the Steelers, which is the nemesis, right? It's been the rivalry for years now. So you have the Steelers, and then you go back. So obviously that first game is huge for the Ravens. But I think if the Browns go sneak that first one W, it actually is crazy because it's big mentally on whoever loses that game. Because if the Browns lose that game, they're like, oh my God, we have to win that next one, right? Even though they have the bye, still the advantage goes Browns, but mentally it's huge for the team that wins and the team that loses. Anyway.
Especially since that first game is in Baltimore, right? Like that's a national TV game in Baltimore. If you lose that one, then you're talking about coming back to Cleveland. That's going to be a difficult one. After playing Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So here's the second place right now. They have the Ravens here for the fans. Browns second, but the Ravens in a good distance. And then first, Browns took that overwhelmingly in our poll. Guys, the poll's not closed. We have about 16 hours to go ahead and vote.
So the poll is Browns 1.
Ravens 2,
Steelers 3, Steelers 4, Bengals 5. Wow, that is tough. That's a lot of hate. As I listen, I know we hate them. We rag on the Bengals on this show. I think that's too low. I have them 4, but
anyway, guys,
4.5.
You have to remember we don't know if we're coming back next week or we're gonna take that the whole month off. So make sure you follow us on Twitter and make sure you hit that bell because YouTube likes to play this trick. So if we don't stream for a couple weeks, they stop telling you when we come live. So make sure you hit that bell. That way when we come back, boom, you know. Before we go, any closing statements here?
No, I'm good.
I cannot wait. I said this in chat. Browns Bengals for me this is must watch TV now. I mean, these are the greatest. These are the greatest games. I cannot this show. This show has changed my perspective.
Even if the Browns beat the Bengals, I'm not gonna feel good about bragging on the Bengals. We beat them.
This is gonna be. I can't wait. I actually can't wait.
Interesting if the Bengals find a way to beat the Browns.
I got a steak dinner on the Bengals splitting with the Browns.
You just told me you thought they were gonna get swept by the Browns earlier this show.
No,
you said that earlier.
I've always said that we're gonna split.
You said the only team that you felt like in the division was going to sweep them was Cleveland. You said that like at the 13-minute mark of.
No, I said that about the Steelers. I think.
Yeah,
I said that about the Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers are getting swept. No, he did. No, he did. He said that the Steelers are getting swept by the Browns. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, Q, because he picked you.
You said this about. All right, man. Like y'all gaslighting me. Y'all
I don't know.
There
were a lot of things said on today's show. Okay, a lot of back and forth today.
Because you
keep track of all of it, but I do remember him saying the Steelers are getting swept.
He specifically mentioned Myles Garrett as a reason for why, because the offensive
Steelers
line
are going to sweep the Browns are going to sweep.
Yeah, the Browns are going to sweep the Steelers. Yeah. Right, because the Steelers don't have anyone to block.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember, IQ. The only thing I'll say. Remember.
By the way, how many sacks did Myles Garrett have last year in that series? I'm just saying, but I'm just saying.
Okay, James. James says, "What are teams planning to start Chubb, averaging 10 yards a carry in the fourth?" Like Chubb is a beast. I don't think anybody here would dispute that.
No.
And by the way, I did want to add that it's almost impossible to think Baker. If Baker goes and throws, I agree here with Q. By the way, over 4,000 yards with that running game, that would be insane. Right, this team is more about balanced teams. You would not expect them to throw over 4,000. If he throws over 4,000 and they can do what they do on the rushing side, I mean, we're talking about this team is just amazing on offense. So I was the only thing I forgot.
I mean, listen, with
wake up Ryan Tannehill. Don't wake up Ryan Tannehill now.
What's wrong with Ryan Tannehill? All right, anyway.
Joe Burrow.
Okay. Anyway, let's close it out, guys. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Next time might be next week. It might be
2 weeks, 3 weeks. Could be a month. Could be forever. You never know.
Hit that bell. We'll see you next time, guys. Peace out.
Have you ever?
Are you listening? Damn.
Looking for a wall in the end zone. His second touchdown.
Yeah.
And the ball is